What up, folks? What's going on? Welcome to the Spun Today Podcast, the only podcast that is anchored in writing, but unlimited in scope. I'm your host, Tony Ortiz, and I appreciate you listening. This is episode 186 of the Spun Today Podcast, and it is the third iteration of the Advice from Creatives for Creatives episode. The two previous episodes like this one, Advice from Creatives for Creatives number 1 and number 2, were released on June 1st, 2017 and March 4th, 2021, respectively. If you're interested and you like this episode, feel free to go back and check those out. Now, what I do with these episodes is I take a bunch of different responses of Spun Today questionnaires that have been submitted. I clip them out of the shows that they were previously aired on, and I mash them together and share them here in one place for you, my fellow creatives, to get the most bang for your buck in terms of advice from creatives for creatives. Now, what is the Spun Today questionnaire? If you go to spuntoday.com/questionnaire, you're going to find 5 open-ended questions that each and every one of you listening right now can go to, check out, fill out your responses for each of the questions, and submit them to me. What I then do, as you're going to see in this episode, is read and share your responses with the fellow listeners of the Spun Today podcast. We've had mainly writers submit their responses to the questionnaires, but we've had painters as well. And it's really open to any and all creatives. It really is for any type of creative. I've taken tips from there that I've implemented into my own writing. And I just think it's interesting and cool to kind of get like an insight into how other people work and how they approach their creative endeavors. Because we're all different, sometimes there is overlap and similarities, but we also have our differences. I just find that fascinating. And like I say at the top of the page at spuntoday.com/questionnaire, if your responses could potentially spark inspiration in someone else, why not share that? Somebody listening to this that's on the fence and that kind of has that like creative spirit, but is kind of stuck in a paralysis by analysis type of rut and doesn't know how to move forward or just start or begin and might be scared to, might listen to this and say, hey, you know what, that made sense. And that person that has already published a couple books says that they approach it in a way that I was kind of sort of thinking of approaching it, but I didn't know or think that was the quote unquote right way to do it. There is no right way. So, but in sharing your stories and stuff like that and your responses to these questions, folks can see that and it might motivate them to pursue their creative endeavors. Let me just read you the 5 questions that are covered within the Spun Today questionnaire so you guys can have an idea of how it works, and then we'll jump right into it. The first question is, relating to your craft, do you remember the first thing that you ever wrote or created? If so, what was it? The second question is, what inspires you to write or create? The third question is, what is a hobby that you have that is unrelated to your craft? This could be anything from what you're currently reading, a show you're currently watching, or something that you're just experimenting with. The fourth question is, how do you get yourself to sit down and do your work when you're not motivated to? And lastly, the fifth question is, do you have any advice for other writers or creators, whether they're new, seasoned, or otherwise? And that's it. Then you have the option to remain anonymous if you don't want me to say who you are or plug your website and stuff like that. And then all submissions are shared, similar to how you're going to hear now, on a future free writing session episode of the Spun Today podcast. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode and get something from it. Before we jump into it, here is a very quick way that you can help support the Spun Today podcast if you so choose. You can support the Spun Today podcast by checking out my writing. You can go to spuntoday.com/free writing and check out some of my free association writing, which is intended to be some cathartic free writing, but oftentimes doubles down as motivation for myself and others. At spuntoday.com/short stories, you can read a bunch of the different short stories that I've written and actually listen to the audiobook versions of those short stories there as well. Another way you can help support my writing is by going to spuntoday.com/books and checking out what I have in store for sale. Digital copies are available in all formats, whether it be Kindle, iBooks, or a different type of e-reader. You can also purchase paperback copies if that's your preferred reading method. Currently available, I have my nonfiction, Make Way For You, which is a collection of freely written thoughts, that were curated and put together as tips for getting out of your own way. Also available is my debut time travel novel titled FRACTAL. Again, go to spuntoday.com/books to show your support. Spun Today Questionnaire response from fellow writer Steph Armstrong. Steph Armstrong, you guys can check out on Twitter. Her Twitter handle is at Steph, Steph, Eenie, spelled Eeenie. So Stephanie basically with all the extra E's. And Stephanie has a free workbook for creatives that's coming out on the 27th. I'm assuming of this month of May. And it's called Find Your Flow, a quick start guide to getting your creativity back. So let's take a look and see what Steph had to say and to share with us by filling out the questionnaire. Question number 1. Relating to your craft, do you remember the first thing you ever wrote or created? If so, what was it? Steph wrote, I can't say I remember the details. I definitely remember writing some boy band fiction when I was in middle school for my friends. Sounds pretty cool. I don't know exactly. I'm ashamed to say what any like fan fiction is. I was never into that. But my understanding is that it's, pretty much just writing fiction and using in this case, like the boy band as like characters within your fiction. So I'm assuming something to the effect of, Justin Timberlake came to, junior high school 210 and sang for us, and he picked me out of my sea of friends at the prom, and I danced with him on stage, and it was magical, blah, blah, blah. Like that type of thing, I'm assuming. It's cool to see like people's evolution though, like different things that they used to be into. I mean, we all go through phases, right? Especially like in our preteen and teenage years and stuff like that. Me, for example, I can get just as motivated or just as into Eminem, Jay-Z, Tribe, Called Quest, whatever, as like back in the day when I was like in middle school actually, or very early high school, as I could get into Truly, Madly, Deeply, Savage Garden, or God Must Have Spent in Sync, or sometimes Britney Spears, or, like those types of songs, which I probably shouldn't be admitting publicly, but whatever, fuck it. We're all eclectic beings into a bunch of different types of things. All right, so let's go on to question number 2. What inspires you to write or create? Steph responded, I'm a big believer in finding inspiration nearly everywhere. While bursts of inspiration can sometimes come from seemingly nowhere, that's not exactly accurate to say. Every moment of creativity has a source. At some point, a seed was planted. Anytime I catch myself saying, oh, or that's interesting, I make a mental note, or more often, an actual note, in my phone, on my hand, wherever. I'm never short of ideas. Whether or not those ideas are good ideas is up for debate. But in a general sense, I feel a compulsion to create. It's just a part of who I am. And when I deny that part, I feel its impact on my general mental health. So whether I have an idea that feels worth exploring or not, knowing this is vital to who I am and inspires me to keep moving forward. Very well said, and I couldn't agree more. Especially with a good takeaway for everybody listening, fellow writers and stuff like that, because I hear way too often, and including with myself, that you get ideas or you have a dream, or in the middle of the night you have an idea that quote unquote comes out of nowhere. Push it off to I'll remember it. This is way too good of an idea, or whatever. Even if it's not, like if you don't have that immediate connection to it, you're like, I'll obviously remember this in the morning. Then morning comes or later on, and poof, it's gone, and it doesn't come back, and that happens way too often. Don't let stuff like that go. Take Steph's advice and literally write it down. Write it on your phone. There's a bunch of apps out there. Your phone comes with writing apps. You can download a bunch of free apps like Day One that we've mentioned in the past on the podcast. Evernote. Scrivener has an app for your phone, which is not free, but I use it, and it's pretty dope because it works very easily and seamlessly with your Scrivener on your computer. You update something to the computer, it pops up on your phone, like once you sync it, and it's literally like a button that you click that syncs it, and vice versa. So like I write a lot on the train, and I click sync. When I come home on the computer, everything that I updated, all my notes and stuff are on the computer as well. So it's pretty dope. But the point is, write it down. Write it even on your hand if necessary. I use like notebooks a lot, and I heard Joe Rogan mentioning a different comic. I think it was Ari. Speaking about Ari Shafir, I believe. And if it's a different comic, I apologize. But they were speaking about ideas, the same exact topic, and saying that their notebook is like a net for ideas. Now, I want to say it was actually Bill Burr or Russell Peters now. I don't know why. But anyway, the point is that they treat their notebook as like a net for ideas. So all the ideas that they have, whether good, bad, whatever, that comes later. And it's also subjective, so who gives a fuck? All the ideas that you have, treat that notebook as like your net for ideas. You're just catching ideas. And by catching them, I mean writing them down. And you have them for later. That's it. You caught them. They're in your net. What you do with them thereafter is a separate process. But just in terms of pinning them down, write them down. The second part that was very interesting to me was the whole part about when you deny, exercising your craft, you notice an impact on your general mental health, which I was actually having a conversation about this with my wife recently, and she was like that. She sees me like more calm lately and not as frustrated as I used to be, or like a snappy, etc. And I attributed that to 3 things. Meditating, which I've actually been on my longest streak of, going on like 2.5 months now, meditating every day for 10 minutes a day. Also to writing and podcasting, because they're both like my outlets. And I've said it before, it's a way, it's cathartic and therapeutic for me, and I just get shit out. And you're not as wound up. And you have some place to expend that energy. And it doesn't have to be, some people that manifests in going to the gym and getting out that physical energy, but that like mental energy, you need like an outlet for that as well. For me, it's writing and podcasting. So I definitely feel you on that. All right, question 3. What is a hobby that you have that is unrelated to your craft? And Steph responded, everything can come back around to writing, in my experience. But this ties back to my habit of actively seeking out inspiration or ideas in everything I do. I love checking out new modes of storytelling. ARG campaigns, I don't know what that is. Twine games, movies, television, serial fiction podcasts. My hobbies all revolve around storytelling in some sense. And that's pretty dope. Obviously, I'm into like movies and television and stuff like that also, on these random rant episodes, which are different from the free writing episodes where I just focus on like writing pieces that I've written. The random rant episodes is where like I get into stuff like in this episode, TV shows that I'm watching or movies, and like break them down. But I definitely get inspiration from them. That's why I'm like drawn to them. They inspire me to want to write better, want to strive to be better, want to, for example, now develop characters much more deeply in my stories. I'm not sure what the ARG campaigns are or Twine games, but again, different strokes for different folks. I definitely agree. Inspiration can and does come from anything and everything that you do. Serial fiction podcasts. Check out, it's not necessarily serial fiction, but it's serial, I guess, historical fiction, historical account. And I mentioned it in detail in episode 71, I want to say, of the podcast, or episode 70. One of the recent podcasts that I did stuff, check it out. I spoke about Bronzeville, a podcast in detail, which might be something that you would be interested in if you're into serial fiction podcasts. Question number 4. How do you get yourself to sit down and do your work when you're not motivated to? And Steph responded, the only motivation I need these days is the reminder that nothing will change if I don't show up at the page and do the work. Brilliantly said. I couldn't agree more. It's like the sentiment of Stephen Pressfield in The War of Art, of fighting resistance and doing so by showing up. It's also a sentiment related by David McCullough in the clip that I played for you guys earlier, where he said that you can only learn by doing it. Stephen King speaks of this as well in his book on writing. So I absolutely couldn't agree more. And lastly, question number 5. Do you have any advice for other writers or creators, whether they're new, seasoned, or otherwise? And Steph responded, don't take the advice of others too seriously. We're all making it up as we go. And with that said, I can't say anything else. So, no, I'm joking. That's absolutely 100% true. One of the main things that I realized early on, and just before I started podcasting, now going on, like 2.5 years, or before I started taking writing seriously, for a couple years longer than that, was, in listening to different interviews with different authors and podcasters and stuff like that, it's like a switch went off. And I don't know if maybe everybody knows this, and I was left out in the dark longer than others. But in case you are still in that place, realize that we're all, just throughout life in general, like we're all, and I noticed this even at work also, nobody has things all figured out. They don't. They are literally making it up as they go, and not just making it up out of thin air, but like learning things as they go and learning different aspects to their trade or whatever it is that they're trying to learn as they go. And again, you can only learn by doing it. There's no set paths to writing, to podcasting, to painting, to being an accountant, to anything. There's slight variations in each and every one of those fields and each of every one of the people within those fields. Everybody has a story, and you just got to create your own. Steph, thank you again very much for taking the time to fill out the Spun Today Questionnaire. If any other fellow writers or creatives would like to fill out their version of, feel free to go to spuntoday.com/questionnaire. And again, you all can follow Steph on Twitter at Stephanie, spelled STEPHEEENIE. And remember that on the 27th of, I believe, May 2017, she has her workbook coming out, a workbook for creatives, which is free. And it's called Find Your Flow, a quick start guide to getting your creativity back. Travis Kepler is a fellow author, currently working on a dystopian novel entitled Predators and Prey. You can follow Travis on Twitter at TravisKepler28. Question number 1. Relating to your craft, do you remember the first thing you ever wrote or created? If so, what was it? Travis responded, the first poem I remember writing was written in the 3rd grade. It was about a veteran farting while receiving a medal and everyone trying to act like they didn't notice. The first time I tried to write a book was in the 4th grade, and it was basically my friends and I with medieval weapons and elemental powers. That's funny. That reminds me of 2 separate things. The one of the poem and the guy farting. When he was in 3rd grade, the guy farting, receiving a medal, reminds me of Forrest Gump. Remember the movie Forrest Gump? When Forrest gets back from Vietnam and is receiving the Medal of Honor from, I guess, President Johnson, right? Would have been LBJ. And he asks him, or was it Nixon? I don't know. And he asks him, yeah, it was Nixon, because then they showed like the Watergate scandal thing. But I wonder if that was in the same scene. Yeah. All right. And he asks him where it was that he got shot, and Forrest just like pulls down his pants and like shows him his shot wound on his ass. I don't know why, but that reminded me of that. I guess the medal and farting and ass. That's funny. Oh, the other thing reminds me of a South Park episode that I don't remember too well, but I just remember like the kids being like dressed up like medieval times type of thing, or wanting to go to medieval times, like something like that. But that's pretty cool. I wonder if you still have like the actual poem or the story or something like that. That would be pretty cool. Question number 2. What inspires you to write or create? And Travis wrote, so many things. I look for inspiration wherever I happen to be. Language fascinates me, And the fact that we can use it to capture intense emotions and the little ridiculous moments in life is, I think, so beautiful. I want very much to create beautiful things that touch people's hearts, and I think the best chance I have of doing so is through my writing. I couldn't agree more with that. Well said. And he continues to say, sometimes I'll just get an urge to get something down or put a wonderful feeling to words, and I'll set to tinkering around until I produce something that I like. That's pretty cool. I wonder if you do any free writing, which I will showcase some of in the next segment of this episode, and is also featured on every free writing session episode of the Spun Today podcast. Now, what it is, and if anybody listening doesn't know, is literally pen to paper, and you pour out your freely written thoughts, meaning anything and everything that comes to mind. And when you're in a state like that, like Travis mentions, sometimes he has this urge to get something down or to put a wonderful feeling into words. Free writing is excellent for that. It's almost meant for that. Aside from the catharsis that you get from just having that introspective outlet, it's a great way to flesh out ideas and feelings, and I feel, at least for me, is more raw and emotional and less polished, yes, because it's just one take, first draft, first thing that came to mind. You're not thinking about structure, you're not thinking about theme, you're not thinking about any of the tropes of a story or anything like that. You're just putting it out there, putting yourself out there, heart on your sleeve type of thing. I think it's a great way to get emotions out. So definitely try it if you haven't, if any of you that are listening have not. Question 3. What is a hobby that you have that is unrelated to your craft? And Travis responded, I have way too many irons in the fire when it comes to hobbies. I just tend to enjoy learning new things and getting good at them, especially if it happens to put me in good company. Some of them include soccer, rock climbing, Super Smash Brothers, Melee, love the pro scene, cooking, learning foreign languages, and general travel. I like asking this question because I feel that different things that you do bleed into each other, and you get, even if they're unrelated, you get at times something that you can take from one experience and apply it to another one. And I think that's pretty cool. So I'm with you on a few of these things. Not the soccer, not the rock climbing, although it sounds kind of cool. But I don't think I've ever done any rock climbing at all, except maybe in PE class, gym class back in high school or something like that. Super Smash Brothers, I've never played. Cooking, I'm with you on that. Cooking, baking. I tried doing, what I did for the first time the other day? Literally, 2 days ago? A beef brisket. And I slow cooked it. There's a cool recipe that I found that was fairly simple. But I made my own rub out of, according to the recipe, out of liquid smoke, olive oil, apple cider vinegar, garlic powder, onion powder, black pepper, cayenne pepper, salt, and dry parsley leaves. And I made the rub out of that and, rubbed it all over the brisket meat, which is, by the way, beef shoulder. I was looking for a meat called brisket, like skirt steak or something like that. I thought it was just called brisket, but it's just the beef shoulder, which kind of worked out because it's like a tough, cheaper type of meat. So you get a big ass slab of it, a big hunk of it for I think it was 8 or 9 pounds was $25, $26, something like that. So it's kind of cheap and it comes out really good. So you put this rub on, then you just put it in the slow cooker for 12 hours. So I left it overnight. I left it for a little longer. I left it for 13 hours. Then I took it out and then I broiled it for about 10 minutes. And the crust on the outside, or the skin on the outside, kind of gets nice and charred. Not burnt, but charred. And it was pretty good. Slow cookers, though, they tend to make the food taste like desabrido. like it doesn't have enough seasoning. I don't know what the word is in English for this, Abreu, but so you have to like over season. So it was good, but it definitely could have been better. But it was cool, simple, and like tasty to make, and I like using the slow cooker, having something, cooking for. I like the idea of it, of cooking for like such a long time. Makes me feel like I'm doing more than what I'm actually doing. And but I'll definitely, next time I try it, poke holes in the meat, which my sister-in-law actually recommended, and I think is a good idea because that'll like help tenderize it more, or at least allow it to like soak up its juices that come out of it, like in the slow cooker, and probably make it juicier, and let the seasoning like circulate through it or something. And I would definitely season it more. Like I'd over season it. Like I'd do the rub the same way, but I'd probably like add more salt and adobo. And my other sister-in-law recommended like a sopita, which is like this super salty like chicken stock, not stock, but chicken bouillon, I think it's called. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, I'm into the cooking part also. It's a different form of creativity, right? That's all that is. Learning foreign languages. I speak English, obviously Spanish, and some Portuguese. So kind of sort of with you on that. And like I have coworkers from, Polish coworkers, Russian coworkers, and like I ask them like how to say like different words like here and there, where when I overhear them saying something, like I'll ask them what that meant or whatever, So I'm with you on that. And general travel is absolutely dope. So 100% I'm with you there as well. Question 4. How do you get yourself to sit down and do your work when you're not motivated to? And Travis responded, I'm a recent college graduate, and though I was an excellent student, the immovable deadlines is what helped me get real work done. This is my way of saying that I'm still figuring this one out. I was struck by inspiration often enough during my busy college years to keep me happy with the progress on my creative endeavors. But the hope to someday make a living off of it necessitates more consistent productivity. So far, I've found that having scheduled sprints will help get the ball rolling, as well as setting goals. I couldn't agree with you more. That's definitely the name of the game, at least from, successful authors that I follow that are making a living off their writing, which are not, just like the big names like J.K. Rowling and Stephen King, but people like Joanna Penn from the Creative Penn Podcast, who has, I think, like 10 or 11 novels and another like 6 or 7 nonfiction books, or a Stephen Pressfield, or a Malcolm Gladwell, a Robert Greene, etc., etc. It's about consistency, focus on your craft, focusing on bettering your craft, but actually being productive and putting work out there. I really like that idea that you mentioned of having scheduled sprints. That sounds pretty cool to get the ball rolling. I never really thought of it that way, but it sounds like you could definitely spark some writing and definitely get the ball rolling, like you said. I have more of like a general schedule, like more so times that I know that I could write. Like right now with a newborn at home, it's mostly when I'm on the subway riding to and from work from the day job. That's a good time. It's like an hour each way. Or sometimes like early mornings or late nights when I'm up with the baby, just fed him, just like carrying him, burping him, or something like that. And I have the Scrivener app on my phone, which syncs up to the computer. So anything I write on the computer is also on my phone, or anything that I write on my phone is also on the computer, etc. That's pretty handy. And something else that I find effective is keeping like physical track of your writing. Like I mentioned I start off every free writing episode with my writing stats, and where that comes from is actually a tip that I got from Jerry Seinfeld, not directly, but from an interview of his where somebody asked him about writing and how he gets himself to write, and like what's his routines like. And he has a physical calendar, as I do, where he marks X's on each day that he actually wrote. And then the X's next to each other on the calendar make like this chain. He says, like, he sees like a chain, like each X is connected kind of. If he doesn't write on a day, he doesn't mark an X. He leaves it blank. And then he winds up seeing that as like a break in the chain, and it like irritates him to the point where he's that much more motivated to write. And then once, he's written for a few days in a row and, worked on his craft, and he sees like a long chain of X's, then he doesn't want to break the chain, so that motivates him to continue writing, etc. So I kind of sort of got that. Well, I got like the general idea of like keeping track on paper of the days that I write and don't write, and to ways to like keep myself honest. And what I do, I don't like see it as like the chain thing and the X's. I just do a checkbox if I wrote on a day, and an X if I didn't write on that day. And I want to see obviously more check marks than X's. And as a way to keep myself honest, I at the end of each month, I jot down what the numbers are, which are the numbers that I share with you guys in the beginning of each episode. And I also take a picture, like a physical, like picture of the calendar with the check marks and X's, and I tweet it out along with the percentage and, hashtag, August 2018 writing stats or whatever. Follow me on Twitter, by the way, at Spun Today. But yeah, that's something that's helped me at times get a bit, kind of give myself a kick in the ass when I don't feel motivated to do what I gots to do. All right, final question, last and not least. Do you have any advice for other writers or creators, whether they're new, seasoned, or otherwise? And Travis wrote, I'm not sure I'm in any position to be giving out advice in this field. Don't worry, we all feel like that, which is good. I mean, you don't want to hear some asshole be like, yeah, let me tell you exactly what you got to do this, and that. All right. He continues then to say, but I would definitely encourage people to keep reading and writing when inspiration strikes them. I love seeing casual stories that people are working on and have nothing but good things to say about the writing community as I have experienced it. It can be really intimidating to see the amazing work that other people are capable of, but that isn't a reason to be discouraged. Time and practice. Very well said, Travis. I definitely agree that people should, keep reading and writing when inspiration strikes them, but I would also add, which is something that I got from Stephen Pressfield's book, The War of Art, to also push through the times that you don't feel inspired to write. And write anyways. Like sometimes, in the morning, I'm like sleepy and tired on the subway, and I'm like, I don't want to fucking write. I'd rather, listen to a podcast or a little music, doze off for like half hour. If I have a seat, more often than not, I find myself actually like manning up and writing. And for me, it's like writing, like the hardest part about writing is like starting to do it. But like once you sit down to do it, that's it. Like once you like crack that door open, like you're good. And, I might, squeeze out, 2 or 3 paragraphs, or maybe even one paragraph, or a few sentences even. And sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, but it's like working that muscle, you know what I mean? So you could definitely yield some positive results from getting past that patch of resistance. Travis, thanks again for filling out the Spun Today Questionnaire, which can be found at spuntoday.com/questionnaire for anyone listening on that would like to fill out their own and be featured in a future episode of the podcast. Again, you can follow Travis on Twitter at TravisKepler28 and look out for his dystopian novel entitled Predators and Prey. All right, let's read Yvette's responses. Question number 1. Relating to your craft, do you remember the first thing you ever wrote or created? If so, what was it? And Yvette responded, I remember in high school, I wrote a horror story called The Disappearance. I was obsessed with horror stories, And I just had an idea and I went with it. I was writing part of it in my English class when my classmates asked what I was doing and asked to read it. They loved it. It was a real head swelling experience. That's pretty cool to have that type of experience. Either you're a natural, really good writer, and or you had some really cool, non-douchey classmates. Either way, it's definitely encouraging to have support like that, especially when you're being vulnerable and putting yourself out there with something so like intimate, something that's so like a part of you, like it's something that came from you. Having it be accepted is just a dope thing. And the fact that they loved it, even better. I remember in high school having a English teacher, shout out to Miss Gitlitz, that used to assign these things called lit logs. Lit is short for literature. And it was, like just like short passages based on something that we were like reading in class or just like writing exercises. She would always encourage me and always tell me how much she looked forward to reading mine. And I don't know if she told everybody in the class that or not, but I definitely felt special, and that was definitely encouraging. And she would like write back like these long paragraphs of feedback, not just like with technical things that I got wrong or like corrections, misspellings and stuff like that, but just like commentary on my writing and stories of her own that my writing made her think about and triggered thoughts in her. And it's like it's an encouraging thing when, again, you share something and it's accepted in a positive way. All right, question number 2: what inspires you to write or create? And Yvette responded, I started writing to basically escape reality. I create a new world, one where I wasn't unwell, one where I didn't suffer pain, and I often did escape. I get inspiration from the strangest places. I couldn't say for sure what actually inspires me, but I write mostly from experiences. First off, I'm sorry to hear that you were unwell, and hope you're doing better. And if that's not in actuality and you are still feeling unwell, and I don't want to pry or anything, but I hope that the suffering at least subsides and you are able to continue to find inspiration in the strangest places and take yourself away from those bad feelings. And I definitely co-sign on the inspiration coming from experiences. That's a big thing, right? Living life and experiencing life to be able to take in and recreate through your creativity, your interpretation of different experiences. We're all a microcosm of life as seen from our vantage point. Question 3: what is a hobby that you have that is unrelated to your craft? And Yvette responded, I used to do a lot of photography. I mainly photographed models. I loved it. I don't do much of it anymore because I have a progressive condition which has worsened over the years. Another hobby I did but don't get to do anymore is scuba diving. I am a licensed underwater photographer. Sadly, I don't do either. So my main everything is writing. Well, I guess that there clarifies my question from earlier regarding the progressive condition, and very sorry to hear that it's worsened over the years. I have some exposure personally to progressive conditions with my wife having MS, but it hasn't been, thankfully, anything that has debilitated her from doing something that she's passionate about. So, although it is limiting in certain ways, it hasn't been to that extent. So I can just imagine how rough it is. And although you're not able to do the scuba diving, which honestly sounds scary as shit to me. I did snorkeling once and it was pretty cool, but I can't imagine like scuba diving and going like deeper than, a foot or two below the surface. It's just fucking scary. But if you're into it, you're into it, right? And I'm sure things look amazing down there. and being a licensed underwater photographer must be cool. I'm into photography as well, but it's mainly like landscape photography, and I'm like the guy at a party with the camera, trying to get active live images of people. So I don't have like the same taste, I guess, for photography, you can say, in terms of like photographing models. But still, I totally get that. So yeah, although you aren't able to do those things anymore, I'm super happy that you still are able to write. And how you say that your main everything is writing, I think that statement in and of itself comes full circle, in that, like, to me, writing is everything. Writing is life. Writing is communication. Writing is books, obviously. Writing is movies. Writing is TV shows. Writing is communication. Writing is love. Writing is expression. Writing is everything. Writing is coordination. Writing is politics. Writing is health. Writing is truth. Writing is lies. Writing is sharing. So it's definitely dope that you have that. Question 4. How do you get yourself to sit down and do your work when you're not motivated to? And Yvette responded, this is a hard one for me. When I'm not motivated, sometimes I can go weeks without writing. What has helped me recently is I started reading a book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I'm going to jot that one down and check it out. Thank you for that recommendation. Where she recommends doing a journal called The Morning Pages. Oh shit. That's so fitting with the writing tip that we went over earlier. I really feel that this helps me get motivated. It opens my creative pathway for the rest of the day by writing away all thoughts in the morning. That's so cool. I'm sure you heard the writing tip at the head of the episode, Yvette, but if you didn't because you found my voice annoying or boring and you just skipped ahead to this part, go back and listen, or just check out the episode notes. And there's an interesting article by James Clear regarding just this journaling and different types of it that you might like and find helpful. And I'm going to return the favor with a book recommendation called The War of Art by Steven Pressfield, which is my favorite book, and the book that pretty much got the ball rolling for me in terms of writing. And I read it multiple times, and each time you get something else from it. But it's all about resistance being this actual force that stops you from writing, and in your case, for example, can keep you weeks without writing. It's a force called resistance that is actively doing that, and it gives you like tips and advice on how to overcome that and actually do your work. And again, it's called The War of Art by Steven Pressfield, which I will also link to in the episode notes. And lastly, question number 5. Do you have any advice for other writers or creators, whether they're new, seasoned, or otherwise? And Yvette responded, you are always learning, so accept all advice and tips from anybody because you will never know when it will help you. And I couldn't agree more with that. Don't believe that success will come and find you. You really have to go and work really hard for it. Definitely with you there. Writing is tough, really tough. And those days where you want to burn everything you've written or give up on writing because you're, quote, not good enough, end quote. Remember, we all get these days. We are all the same in that way. And you are good enough. Writing is hard for everyone. Absolutely. Yvette, thanks again for taking the time to filling out the Spun Today Questionnaire. I will be emailing you a direct download link for my book, Make Way for You, Tips for Getting Out of Your Own Way. Free of charge, of course, for taking the time to partake in the Spun Today Questionnaire. You can use the link to download a copy of my book in any format that you'd like, whether it be Kindle, iBooks, a PDF, whatever works best for you. And obviously, feel free to rate and review it if you enjoy it. Again, folks, if you want to thank Yvette for sharing with the Spun Today community, feel free to reach out on Twitter, which I linked to in the episode notes. She is The Improviser, at The Improviser. And once again, she is Miss Writer, a.k.a. Y.L. Gorman, a.k.a. Yvette Gorman. Thank you. Next up, we have a Spun Today Questionnaire response submitted by attorney and author Eileen Martinez. For those of you that may not know, Eileen is Spun Today alumni. She was the featured guest of episode 163. So definitely go ahead and check that episode out. We had a great conversation. And she was kind enough to share her responses for the Spun Today Questionnaire, which if any of you writers or creatives listening would like to do so as well, you can do so by going to spuntoday.com/questionnaire. Eileen published a book titled Daring to Love While Praying the Rosary. Her contact information, her social media, as well as ways to purchase her book can be found at eileenmartinez.org, all of which will be linked in the episode notes of this show. Now let's jump into the questionnaire. Question number 1 is, relating to your craft, do you remember the first thing you ever wrote or created? If so, what was it? And Eileen responded, at about 8 years old, I wrote a quote-unquote book about my mom with photos and all. How adorable is that, right? Then she continues, when I was in middle school, I won an award from the Anti-Defamation League for a letter I wrote to a refusenik in the Soviet Union. How cool is that? I remember in junior high getting like a certificate for attendance or something like that. And I thought it was the shit. Imagine getting an award from the Anti-Defamation League for something that you wrote. And for those of you who may not know what a refusenik is, luckily for you, I also did not know, and I paused and Googled it. A refusenik was an unofficial term for individuals, typically, but not exclusively, Soviet Jews who were denied permission to emigrate primarily to Israel by the authorities of the Soviet Union and other countries of the Eastern Bloc. And then Eileen wrapped up the first question by saying that when I was young, I always wrote letters to my aunts and uncles just to tell them how much I love them. And that's really sweet. I think we touched on that as well during episode 163 of the podcast. That made me think of, for some reason, writing thank you notes to folks. Like when you receive a birthday gift or a Christmas gift and the parents make the kid write a thank you note to the person that gave them the gift. I don't know why exactly I just thought of that, but I'm making a mental note to force my kids to do that as soon as they're old enough to write. I'm sure they're gonna love that. Alrighty, question number 2. What inspires you to write or create? And Eileen responded, love, music, ballet, beautiful scenery, and architecture. I like to write to make others smile. And that is probably one of the top reasons to write, right? To evoke emotion from folks. Love and music, scenery, and architecture are definitely wells of inspiration for me as well. Can't say I'm with you, Eileen, on the ballet thing, pero para lo gusto se hicieron los colores, right? I wonder if she does or did ballet, or just draws inspiration. I keep saying information for some reason, or just draws inspiration from watching it. I'll have to ask her next time she's on the show. Question number 3. What is a hobby that you have that is unrelated to your craft? And Eileen responded, I play the piano. I embroider. Embroidery connects me with my abuela. Embroidery was my grandmother's profession before she migrated to the United States. After she moved to the US, she would embroider little things like handkerchiefs and give them to people as gifts. I keep her legacy going and do the same. It's a really tender and genuine connection that Eileen had with her grandmother. And we spoke about their relationship in the episode that we recorded. And I think that it's an amazing thing the way that she chose to keep her legacy going by getting into the embroidery and following suit with giving folks gifts. I actually have a few pictures up on the website of a few of the embroidery examples. If you folks want to check it out, go to spuntoday.com/podcast/163. That's the landing page for that specific episode. Question number 4, how do you get yourself to sit down and do your work when you're not motivated to? And Eileen responded, I swim. And when I cannot swim, I have to get the room in a mood. I buy flowers and set the stage for creativity. Sometimes when I cannot write, I jot down notes. And when I'm able, I keep a journal. Now, this is all great advice. And thank you for sharing, Eileen. Because even if doing these exact same things to motivate yourself to write won't work for someone listening, doing their versions of may definitely work. Like, for example, if someone's not into swimming or does not have access to a pool or beach or something like that, their version of might be a bike ride or taking a jog or just exercising in general. Getting the room in a mood and setting the stage for creativity, like you said, is definitely something that makes a huge difference for me. And it's something that folks like Stephen Pressfield and Stephen King harp on as well, which is approaching the task of writing with a sense of professionalism, carving out specific times when it is that you're supposed to focus on writing and not making the mistake of, going on Twitter for a couple minutes or checking your Instagram feed or going through emails, etc. Like, if it's writing time, it's writing time. And whether that mood setting includes buying flowers or lighting a candle or putting some background music on or waiting till it's late at night or early in the morning when everybody else is sleeping and you have quiet. Whatever it is that you need to do to set the stage for creativity, do it. And last but not least, question number 5, do you have any advice for other writers, creators, whether they're new, seasoned, or otherwise? And Eileen responded, you can do all things when you write from the heart. Do all things in a spirit of excellence. And that is also great advice. That first part of writing from the heart, I would connect to Aaron Sorkin's advice that we were speaking about earlier, where he says to find and to write in your own voice. And the second piece of doing all things in the spirit of excellence is not only great advice when it comes to applying that mentality to your craft, but also life advice in general. Having a dignity about and an integrity about what it is that you're doing. I think that definitely shines through. Eileen, thank you once again for taking the time to fill out the Spun Today Questionnaire. Folks listening, if you'd like to submit your responses so I can read them on a future episode of the podcast, please do by going to spuntoday.com/questionnaire. And once again, you can check out Eileen Martinez's website at eileenmartinez.org, which I will link to in the episode notes. And that was episode 186 of the Spun Today Podcast, folks. I want to thank once again Steph Armstrong, Travis Kepler, Miss Writer Weil Gorman, and Eileen Martinez for taking the time of filling out a Spun Today questionnaire and sharing their creative insights with us. Please check out their respective websites and or social medias that I will link to in the episode notes of this episode as well. And if you, listener of the Spun Today Podcast, would like to fill out a questionnaire of your own, please go to spuntoday.com/questionnaire and do so. You'll answer the 5 questions, choose if you want to remain anonymous or not, and then submit your responses, which I will read on a future free writing session episode of the Spun Today Podcast. Thanks again for each and every one of you that listen to the Spun Today Podcast. I really appreciate the hell out of it. Here are a few different ways you can help support the show if you so choose. Peace. What's up, folks? Tony here. I hope you're enjoying this podcast as much as I enjoy producing it for you. here are a few quick ways you can help support this show. You can support the Spun Today podcast by going to spuntoday.com/support. There, you'll find my merch section, where you can cop the iconic Podcasts vs. Anybody t-shirt in a wide variety of different colors and all different sizes. Also, if you're into cycling, you can cop the super soft, comfortable, minimalist design Spun Today Bike Club t-shirt. Also available in a bunch of different colors in all different sizes. There are a few other designs of different types of t-shirts. Definitely go there and check it out. spuntoday.com/support. It's the merch section, where you can also get a dope coffee mug. I have coffee mugs with the brand new redesigned Spun Today logo on one side and the tagline that I end every show with on the other, which is start taking steps in the general direction of your dreams. The mug is available in both black and white, because we don't discriminate here at the Spun Today podcast. Again, go to spuntoday.com/support and check out the merch section. You can support the Spun Today podcast by checking out my writing. You can go to spuntoday.com/free writing and check out some of my free association writing, which is intended to be some cathartic free writing, but oftentimes doubles down as motivation for myself and others. At spuntoday.com/short stories, you can read a bunch of the different short stories that I've written and actually listen to the audiobook versions of those short stories there as well. Another way you can help support my writing is by going to spuntoday.com/books and checking out what I have in store for sale. Digital copies are available in all formats, whether it be Kindle, iBooks, or a different type of e-reader. You can also purchase paperback copies if that's your preferred reading method. Currently available, I have my nonfiction, Make Way for You, which is a collection of freely written thoughts that were curated and put together as tips for getting out of your own way. Also available is my debut time travel novel titled FRACTAL. Again, go to spuntoday.com/books to show your support. Support the Spun Today podcast by following me on social, at Spun Today on Twitter, at Spun Today on Instagram. Please also check out and like my Facebook page, facebook.com/Spun Today, and subscribe to my YouTube page as well. On my YouTube page, not only will you get these full-length episodes, but you'll also get to check out some chopped up clips and bonus content. To get to my YouTube page, just search Spun Today on YouTube or click on any of the YouTube icons on the footer of my website. Also, don't forget to rate and review this podcast wherever it is that you're listening. It really does help. The Spun Today newsletter is available to each and every one of my listeners absolutely for free. All you have to do is go to spuntoday.com/subscribe and drop in your email address. What I'm going to do is brighten up everybody's least favorite day of the week by delivering 5 curated things within my weekly newsletter every Monday at noon. You're going to receive a photo of the week, a recommended podcast of the week. I listen to tons of podcasts from an array of varied interests. I cherry pick the very best ones so that you can check them out. I also share a video of the week, which can be anything from a tasty recipe to a dope rap battle to an enlightening TED Talk. I also share a quote of the week. And finally, for my fellow wordsmiths out there, a word of the week, so that you can step up your vocab. Again, this curated list is yours absolutely free by going to spuntoday.com/subscribe and dropping in your email address, and you can unsubscribe at any time. Again, go to spuntoday.com/subscribe, drop in your email address, and you'll get the very next one. If you want to help support the Spun Today podcast financially, you can do so by going to spuntoday.com/support. Here you'll find a few different ways that you can do so. You can shop on Amazon, but first go to my website, spuntoday.com/support, click on the Amazon banner, which will take you to Amazon's website where you do your shopping like you normally do. It will not cost you anything extra, but I will get credit for driving traffic to their website. Another cool way that you can help support this show is through Patreon, where you can set up reoccurring donations to my podcast, whether it be $1 per show, $2 per show, etc. And depending on how much you choose to pledge, you will receive some Patreon perks in return. Things like free writing pieces, free bookmarks, free digital copies of my books, etc. Again, my Patreon link can be found at spuntoday.com/support. You can also set up similar reoccurring payments via my Ko-fi page. And if you want to send a one-time happiness bomb donation, if you will, you can do so via my PayPal link. Again, all of which can be found at spuntoday.com/support. If you're a fellow creative, a cool way that you can help support the Spun Today podcast and actually be part of the podcast is by filling out my 5-question questionnaire located at spuntoday.com/questionnaire. Here you'll find 5 open questions related to your craft, your art, what inspires you to create, what type of unrelated hobbies you're into, and what motivates you to get your work done. You can choose to remain anonymous or plug your website and your work. And once you submit your questionnaire, I read your responses on a future episode of the Spun Today podcast. It's completely free at no cost to you. And what I like to say about it is that if your responses could potentially spark inspiration in someone else, why not share that? spuntoday.com/questionnaire. And as always, folks, substitute the mysticism with hard work and start taking steps in the general direction of your dreams. Thanks for listening. I love you, Aiden.
I love you, Daddy.